Falcons finally hired a new GM, and now they can get down to the business of winning.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of the galaxy. And of course, today's Locked On Falcons is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. And across from me, you can see Jarvis Davis. We are down here in Mobile in an undisclosed location in Mobile, Alabama, wrapping up Senior Bowl week. We will give you our standouts, maybe a couple of disappointments, but the main talking point that we have here on today is the Falcons have finally hired a general manager. It took them 3 weeks to get to where they started, which was Ian Cunningham being the front runner, and he emerged victorious in the two-man race between him and James Lipford, the assistant Texans GM, and Cunningham coming from the Chicago Bears, the assistant Bears GM. And Jarvis, my friend, what are your thoughts when you finally hear that Ian Cunningham, after 3 weeks interviewing for the president of football, losing that out to Matt Ryan, and the Falcons finally get here, and it's like, oh, well, you know, they haven't named Ian Cunningham the GM. That was my thought process, Jarvis, going into the week. Which is like, if he hasn't been named so far, then maybe he's not going to be named. But we find out on Thursday evening that he finally is the Falcons' new GM.
Patience is a virtue, my friend. When you think about going through this entire process, being the lead candidate, everybody in their mama thinking that you're actually going to get the job and it's in the bag, but you have them run through all these candidates, Joe Douglas, and you got James Lipford from the Houston Texans, who I felt probably wowed them. And they were like, hey, man, let's bring this guy in for a second interview, because nobody was checking for him initially. So it seemed like, the Falcons really did their homework, but they eventually landed on the guy that I thought was going to still get the job, because, a certain someone who was sitting right next to me said that the James Lipford was going to get it because they were taking all day. You see how he teased that? He was just so like, oh, it took him 3 weeks to do it. And I just don't understand why it takes him so long to do this. But, like I said, man, patience is a virtue. They landed on their guy. They got their guy. They got the guy who had been in the runnings for a general manager spot and a finalist for a general manager spot, but he did not get them. But Ian Cunningham is the man, and I think that it's time to get to work, man, because, hey, I actually saw him at practice, him and Ryan Poles, they were over there, checking out practice and everything, and I was just like, yeah, he probably looking at some wide receivers or some corners because, the Bears don't need that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would he look at that? Because, you know what I'm saying? Matt got him down here a little early, getting that work in. So but Ian Cunningham is the guy, and I think the Falcons landed on the right guy.
Yeah, I think ultimately going into it, even though I switched at the very end towards James Lipford, going into it, I thought Ian Cunningham was the right guy, and my initial instincts were the correct instincts, Jarvis.
Of course, always. Yeah, you're never wrong. Yeah, that doesn't happen.
I was overthinking it, and thinking, second guessing myself and all that stuff. But originally, my gut feeling knew that Ian Cunningham was the right choice the entire time. But we talked about it a bunch over the last 3 weeks on what Ian Cunningham can bring to the table, coming from the Baltimore Ravens, where he got his start under Ozzie Newsome, coming from the Eagles, where he went after Baltimore, working under Howie Roseman, and then these last couple of years as the assistant to Ryan Poles in Chicago. And the thing I've talked about time and time again is, Ian Cunningham's kind of the opposite of Terry Fontenot, which is he believes in trading back. He comes from organizations that consistently have traded back over the last 2 decades that he's been working as a scout and assistant GM and VP of whatever personnel, all the various titles he's held. We'll eventually get that resume correct here on the podcast and give you the exact titles eventually. But To me, that's a welcome choice. We've talked about it a bunch where the Falcons, particularly these last 2 years with Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, have operated with the idea that we're just one piece away.
Yep.
Ian Cunningham, I think, based off of that background, is going to come in and not approach it in that way. How do you see that working should he follow through on that expectation here in Atlanta?
I think one of the things that I think it's interesting that you bring up the whole trade back piece because, Terry was all about trading up, right? If he made any type of move, he was all about trading up. And I think that when you have that singular focused mindset when it comes to your draft strategy, I think you can really get yourself into trouble. And we saw that, right? It happened. So, overdrafting guys, Troy Anderson, who nobody even talking about anymore. He's off the roster. You're not going to get anything out of that second round pick. That's a wasted pick. Arnie Ebiketie, you're probably not going to re-sign him as well. I'm not saying he's a wasted pick, but he didn't necessarily hit like he was supposed to. Rook, the jury's still out. Although I have my personal thoughts that I'm going to keep to myself about Rook, but you know what I'm saying? We'll see how that plays out. But I think that when that is your philosophy, like you gotta hit on them joints, and I don't think he necessarily did that. So hopefully Ian can take what he learned from Howie, take what he learned from Ozzie, and combine that with what he learned from Poles, because Poles was aggressive too. Like everybody was looking at it like he was crazy when he traded down, and like, all right, man, we about to load up on these picks, and because I like that thought process, because I've always said that general managers and coaches have two different mindsets, or they should have two different mindsets. Coaches, they need to win now. They're trying to win now because they ain't got that long of a time. GMs, they need to not only think about now, but they should be solely focused from a job security standpoint on building for the future, always thinking ahead. All right, I know that this guy is coming up, Caleb McGarry, for a contract. So let me go ahead and draft a tackle that I can develop because I'm not going to need him in 2025. So let me draft a right tackle that can come in and kind of learn up under Dwayne Ledford and get some good teaching, and be ready to step into the role that you drafted him to be. But they didn't do stuff like that. So, like you said, with that mindset of, hey, trying to fill a spot, all we need is this guy and we'll be good to go. No, man, you can't build anything sustainable like that. So, hopefully Ian is taking from each guy that he learned from, like two really, really good general managers, and Poles is looking like he's starting to, get his footing too, as well as Chicago with those guys going to the playoffs this year. And he can kind of make it his own.
Yeah. Jarvis, feels like you got a little pent up frustration with the Falcons not, you don't have the same love for Jack Nelson that the rest of the fan base has.
So what? Who?
Mr. Jack Nelson,
Oh, did he play this year?
I think
how many tackles got hurt this year? You couldn't even consider bringing them in?
I think he got 7 snaps in garbage time this year, something like that.
I mean, but like the Falcons needed the right tackle this year, right?
Yeah, that kind of happened.
And we had to watch Elijah Wilkinson hold it down. Yeah. Jumping off sides like he a rookie. Just saying, man. Yeah. Carson Vincent was in a mirror. I'm not gonna go up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm gonna get touched up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
This is the perfect opportunity for someone, in addition to Jarvis Davis, to be like, I wonder who came down to the Senior Bowl the last 3 years and being like, hey, we should draft one of these tackles. And the Falcons didn't draft these tackles, and that bet could have paid off.
Yep.
Now, but again, because the Falcons don't believe in,
you could have had your choice of which tackle you want to play because you drafted 2.
Yes.
In consecutive drafts.
Yes.
You know what I'm
saying?
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. And again, that is all about what we're talking about with being that aggressive, being like, oh, well, we don't need that right now. So let's go get the thing that we need, as opposed to let's stockpile picks. Let's make sure the cupboard is completely stocked so that in the event that we need it, I know for many of you people in Georgia and elsewhere in the South, you're dealing with power outages. You want to make sure you have that fully stocked cupboard so that if, you can't use the stove, you can't use the refrigerator, You got those canned goods, right?
Yeah.
That's what offensive linemen are. They're just a can of
Canned.
corn in the back of your cupboard,
Oh yeah.
ready to go. So we'll talk about a couple maybe offensive linemen that stood out to Jarvis Davis, because I wasn't watching Trench's plays. I know it's crazy that Aaron Freeman of all people was not watching Trench plays this week in Mobile. But we will break down some of the standouts in Mobile as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So wouldn't it be nice if doing your taxes was as easy as handing the ball off to Bijan Robinson? And with TurboTax full service, you can hand off your taxes to a local expert and not have to stress from start to finish, much like you don't have to stress when you hand off Bijan Robinson at the start of a play and watch him finish it in the end zone. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out your forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They're going to handle everything, your W-2s, every self-employment form, as well as work to get every single deduction that you deserve. All you got to do is upload your documents, go about the rest of your day doing whatever you like, right? Watching Bijan Robinson highlights, and you'll get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it's going to give you peace of mind, knowing that an expert is handling, just like that Bijan Robinson is going to take care of that rock when he gets the football. So for a limited time, get your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life by visiting turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. And it is the last call, unfortunately, for football on FanDuel. We just have one more Sunday of football, one last kickoff, our final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. It is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is going to make sure that you're right in the middle of the action with this special offer that's going to get you right just in time for the biggest game. That offer is, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5, and you can get $200 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Whether you're betting the favorite, the Seattle Seahawks, the underdog, the New England Patriots, getting that same game parlay, or you're just interested in the props, right? How long is the national anthem going to go? Those are all available for you at FanDuel. So make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the NFL season is over. It is last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we're continuing today's Locked On Falcons here with myself, Aaron Freeman, and Jarvis Davis. But before we get into our Senior Bowl breakdown, I want to let you guys know about the Everydayer Club, right? I know many of you guys are everydayers, and we thank you for being everydayers of Locked On Falcons. You are the reason why Locked On is the #1 sports podcast network in the galaxy, #1 in America, #1 in the world, so therefore #1 in the galaxy. But you can level up and do more by joining the Everydayer Club at the link in the description below at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. You can find out all the perks you get, like an ad-free version of Locked On Falcons, access to an exclusive Locked On Podcast Network Discord server, as well as get some sweet Locked On merch out there. So go check it out, $5 a month or $50 a year at the link in the description below. So we appreciate you for that. But let's talk more about Senior Bowl, Jarvis. We both made the trip down. We avoided, Winter Storm Fern, 2026,
yes.
Snowmageddon, Ice-mageddon, whatever you want to call it.
All that.
It was chilly down here in Mobile all week. We got some night practices that didn't make it any better as the sun went down. Yes. But, it was a different flow this week.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Jarvis. I went into the week thinking, I think this might be the last Senior Bowl I'm going to go to for the foreseeable future.
Oh, man.
And it kind of reinvigorated. I kind of enjoyed the week a little bit more. Like on Wednesday, I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be my last one. Or on Tuesday. And Thursday, I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to come back, Yeah. So we'll see. We'll figure that out, 9 months from now or whatever. But, it was a good week of practice, as it teased earlier and as I've discussed all week long on Locked On Falcons. I was really focused on wide receivers and corners. I'll give my sort of standouts in those position groups and some of the guys that sort of surprised me that I didn't go into the week knowing too much about, and will have me going back and rewatching the film. But I know, Jarvis, you were out there, still got your eyes on the trenches. I know you saw a couple of pass catchers out there, and maybe you can give a comment or two on those guys. But, we know where your heart lies. And so let the people know, for those of them that have not been getting enough of trench talk here on Locked On Falcons all week long, sort of who were the guys that kind of stood out to you in this Senior Bowl week?
Well, I have to start with the guy that just popped and continued to just maul and just beat up folks out there, and that has to be Keylan Rutledge, the local. He's a guard from Georgia Tech. Jarvis, why are you looking at guards? He can play center. He looks real natural. They had him working at the center position, and he really smooth with his snaps. Seems to be comfortable. I got a chance to talk to him after practice on the first day, and he wants to play guard. He wants to play guard. It's very clear, and he's look really good at it. However, he did say that he would be open to whatever team wants him to play. And I think that when you have a guy like Bill Callahan coming into the fold, and you're gonna run, not only you're gonna do your little wide zone, and all that stuff, but guess what else they're gonna do this year? That gap scheme. So that means you got to be able to move some guys around a little bit, double team, slips, all that good stuff. Yes, I love that. Ryan Newsom, I don't know. I'm just saying, if Rutledge is somewhere around there, maybe the third round ish, you might be, I don't know. After the week he's had, I feel like he probably has upped his status a little bit. He made some money for sure. But yeah, that was the guy that really just popped, man, because I think Bill Callahan is going to bring a certain style. Not to say that Lefford didn't bring that, but when you bring in that gap scheme, there's a certain type of player that you like. Guy with some size, and Rutledge has that. He's about 6'3", about 320, 330. Like, man, and he can snap and he can move. Yeah, those are the type of guys that you want to think about plug and play day one. He'll be that type of guy.
Yeah, not surprised you picked the Georgia Tech guy, Jarvis, but I think it makes a lot of sense because the beauty of if you were to take a Keylan Rutledge and have that center guard flexibility, you don't need him to play right away because you have a left guard, you have a right guard, and you have Ryan Newsom potentially, sure. And so you can kind of just stash him and be like, well, Newsom, Bergeron are both free agents after this season. Whichever spot we need you at, we can have you fill one of those spots.
Yes.
And I'm reminded a little bit of the Lions taking Tate Ratledge out of Georgia last year.
Yes.
And they drafted him with the idea, okay, we'll play him at center, right? Frank Ragnow retired, and he wasn't quite ready to make that transition to center, so they moved him to guard where it was his natural spot that he played at Georgia. And the beauty of the Falcon situation is, in theory, again, we'll see what happens, but in theory, you wouldn't need to force him into the lineup right away. So if he needs a year to adjust to playing center in the NFL, he could potentially have that.
I mean, and that's the beauty of planning, right? Having a plan, like vision. That was the one thing that Arthur Blank said the firm came back with. No vision. And when you don't have a vision, you're going to fail, especially in ball, man. Like, and I think that when you are thinking ahead, like you said, coaches, they in and now. And it's okay for them to be in and now. They want to win now. They need to prove themselves. But as a general manager, you give that coach what he needs for the now. And you also give him what he doesn't know he needs. And that is having those guys ready to roll. Because you have to understand that, hey, if you don't feel like Matthew Bergeron is worth giving that bread because he was solid in that wide zone scheme, you don't think he can be a good gap scheme player, or Bill Callahan doesn't feel like he can be a good gap scheme player, you let him walk. You let him go test the free agent market and see what's out there, and you can plug and play with Keylan Rutledge. And guess what? That's a rookie deal. So you got 4 years of cheap labor, baby. That's what it's all about. You got to plan for these things. So, yeah, if Ian Cunningham comes in and makes a move like that, man, he got a fan in me.
There you go. Now, Jarvis, I think if the Falcons went for a trench player on the defensive side, that guy probably wouldn't be a stash. That guy could potentially play right away. We know that the Falcons have invested some resources on that side of the ball, but you always got to have a deep rotation.
Sure.
And you're potentially going to lose several key components of that rotation this offseason. At the edge rusher, Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie, David Onyemata is a free agent. That D tackle room could be remade. Anybody that you looked at this week, or a couple of names that you saw this week that you could see, being sort of those plug and play rotational pieces?
Oh man, I need a big plug. I'm gonna start with a big plug. How about this? Tim Keenan, Alabama, a big D tackle, 330 pounds, and he every bit of it too, man. But he doesn't move like it. The dude can get off. He's good with his hands. He can anchor down in a double team, and hey, you can move. You try to move me if you want to. And the one thing about him I like about is he can get off. That get off is nice for his size. He moves well. He's really solid and stout against the run. Like, guys tried to move him off, man. They couldn't do anything with him. And I think that he had a really good week of practice. So that's that plug, that big plug. A medium plug is Zane Durant, defensive tackle out of Penn State. That man, you talking about who I'm picking for third downs on third and long to put at that defensive tackle spot? It is absolutely 1,000% Zane Durant, because that man was getting off. Remember how I talked about how Keylan Rutledge was out there throwing all folks all around? He gave Keylan Rutledge all he wanted. And I was just like, man, that's just two really good football players going at it. And Zane got the best of them. So I think Zane Durant is my pass rushing plug from the interior. And my guy Tim Keenan out of Alabama, that's my big plug on first and second down.
Now, Jarvis, I know the Falcons don't have as pressing a need at edge rusher as they've had for the last 75 years. But I know there had to be an edge rusher that caught your attention during the week.
Yeah, man. The defensive end out of Michigan, Moore, he was just getting all up in everybody, man. Like, and the thing about it is, like, a lot of times, man, when there are a lot of eyes on Derek Moore, Derek Moore, when you look at those edge players, a lot of times those guys look forward to the one-on-ones, right? Because that's how you make your money. That's where all the scouts kind of crowd around and get in everybody's way and not be able to see, fully what's going on. So, the one thing about him is he just has that explosiveness. Like, when the ball is snapped, it's almost like you're shooting a gun. Like, he's like a bullet coming out of a gun. Just pow! He's just off, man, off to the races. And their offensive tackles this week, they just struggle to even touch this man. It was almost hard, like even today, it was almost hard for them on 11-on-11 to get a good look, because they're just going through the whole 2-minute drill, and all he's doing is just flying past the quarterback, tap him on the shoulder. Yep, that's a sack. Don't even worry about it. You can go ahead and throw it, but, in the game, you're going on the ground. So, yeah, Derek Moore is a guy that I really like, and I think that, if he doesn't run well, runs a slow 40, doesn't necessarily do that well at the combine, I'm like, hey, Ian, just saying, man, it's all about finding value, man. If he falls far enough for the Falcons to be able to take him. So, yeah, that's a guy that really just caught my eye coming off the edge.
Yeah. I think a lot of these names that Jarvis is naming are people that have that get off that he's talking about, that, certainly Nate Ollie. I'm
drawn to it, Free. I can't help myself.
Yes. So, we'll see if the Falcons can shore up the trenches with some of these pieces. But, much to Jarvis's chagrin, the Falcons do have maybe some more pressing needs at some of the skill spots, like wide receiver and corner. And so we'll get into some of the guys that caught Jarvis's eyes at those, pesky positions that he does not enjoy watching, as well as get into some of the guys that I saw focusing on those position groups that really kind of won the week. And we'll do that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So we know the Falcons don't necessarily have the most illustrious history when it comes to hiring, right? They'll find someone that looks pretty good on paper, and then they find out later, it wasn't quite the right fit. But, if only teams like the Falcons and the rest of the NFL had Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's sponsor, that would help them find the right match. Now, if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need, right? All you got to do is go check out Indeed Sponsored Jobs, and they'll put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results by using Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And you will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job that premium placement that it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. So here with Jarvis Davis, Locked On Sports Atlanta, we are wrapping up Senior Bowl breakdowns. And let's get to those positions that I certainly had my eyes on all week long. And it did hurt me to not watch the trenches. Like to not come out of this week with an offensive tackle that I loved or guard or somebody like that position really hurt my heart. But, you know, filling that void were some of the receivers and corners. But Jarvis, I know you weren't, you know, your eye kept going down to the other side of the field where the trenches guy were. But when you did get the chance to see some of those, you know, finesse, as some people call it, skill players, you know, the divas of the football teams and the receivers and the corners, sort of who stood out in your eyes?
So the one guy that really stood out to me, like I'm all about fit, right? I think about Drake lining up at the X, and Drake is going to command a little bit more attention this year because I think the word is out that he is a really good football player. He's wide receiver 1 for this team, and that bread about to get ready to come on in, bud. That check got to get cut. Hey, man, I would have some conversations right now. Just saying. So he's lined up at the X, someone that I think can really benefit from lining up on the other side, opposite of Drake London, Jacoby Lane. He's not the biggest guy. You don't really need another big guy, but he does have some nice height on him. I think that if the Falcons were to get their hands on him, he could benefit greatly. Reason why I say is because Drake is going to get some doubles. They're going to have some safety help, you know, and I think that you're going to have a lot of eyes on him. And I think backside, I feel like Jacoby Lane did a good job of getting on top of his man and B-man coverage this week. I specifically in 11-on-11, and because you know you can judge the one-on-ones, that's all good and well, but man, that particular drill is built for wide receivers to win. If you don't win, I'm gonna have to look at you kind of crazy. You know, so I think Lane coming to the Falcons, he will have that backside man to man. Hey man, go and lock him up. We're gonna worry about 5 and whoever else is on the other side of the football, and because he did a really good job, you know, when he was locked up on man to man, getting on top of the corner like really quickly, and then be able to, you know, position himself to make a catch. It's just the quarterbacks weren't able to make a throw. But yeah, I know we're gonna talk about disappointments in a little bit, but you know, that's a little teaser right there. But yeah, I think Jacoby Lane was one of those wide receivers that you gotta take a look at. Another guy, Caullin Lacy, because he's a slot guy. You know, they were kind of missing that a little bit. You know, Ray had his little issues. You know, I don't know if Aaron want to talk about it, but you know, we'll leave that for another day. That's enough for another episode.
We got some insight into the whole Ray Club situation down here.
Absolutely. So, but I think Caullin Lacy will be a guy who can help you out on the offensive side of the football because he can get open. He's one of those chop you up guys, and also can help you out in the special team world as well to be able to finally get some type of something from on the kickoff and punt return. Got to get something. Yeah. So I went into the week looking at certain players. Jacoby Lane was one of them. Malachi Fields of Notre Dame was another guy that stood out. Ted Hirsch from Georgia State was another guy that really stood out to me. At the cornerback room, Colton Hood out of Tennessee is probably the highest profile guy there. He shut it down for Thursday, probably because he saw Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft
and was like, I don't need to be here. He had a solid first 2 days and was like, I don't need to go for the trifecta. I thought Chandler Rivers was one of the other corners I went into the week. Really wanted to see him press. I thought he had his best day on Thursday. He was the Duke corner. And, we talked about it going into the week. Is he that premium fancy shrimp, right? Because he's a smaller corner, and I think he is the fancier shrimp than necessarily that old, white shrimp that you buy over at Publix in the frozen food aisle and whatnot. So, if we're going to get another shrimp in here, let's get another fancy shrimp at the cornerback position. Chris Johnson, San Diego State, had a solid week as well. So those were some of the guys that stood out to me, that I expected to stand out this week. But there were a couple of guys that popped at these positions that I did not go into the week pre-scouting just because, they kind of entered the week more maybe consensus day 3 guys. But a lot of guys I thought really impressed. Tyron Montgomery of John Carroll probably was the most impressive wide receiver. And the more I hear about his story, we talked about it a little bit on Falcon Squad earlier on Thursday, of him basically being a basketball player, a walk-on football player, Division III school, putting up huge numbers in Division III, and it's like, okay, well, how can you hold up against some of these top competition in the Senior Bowl week? And he held up just fine. The Missouri wide receiver Kevin Coleman did an excellent job throughout the week. There was a couple of corners. I want to say Fred Davis of Northwestern, and who was the other guy?
Thaddeus Dixon. Get his hands on the football.
Yeah.
You know how the Falcons love those guys now. Yeah.
So there was a couple of guys that stood out during the week that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch the film of these guys. And that's one of the things that, because we've been so busy this last month dealing with, like, are they going to fire Raheem and Terry? And then, or they fired Raheem, who's going to be the new coach? Hadn't done as much pre-draft prep going into the Senior Bowl week. So some of the guys I looked at impressed me. And then it's more important to be like, okay, these are the guys I'm going to circle back to at some of these key positions heading into combine time and have a better idea of what their film shows as we get through that next phase of the pre-draft cycle. But Jarvis, any sort of final thoughts here on Senior Bowl week and other standouts, or maybe a disappointment or two, or anything else you want to share before we duck out of here?
Man, the quarterbacks on the American team were awful. It's like you can see the frustration on the wide receivers' faces, and they're just overall body language after being overthrown by like 10 yards above their heads. It was just simple stuff, man. Like Garrett Nussmeier, like, bro, hey, man, you might need to sell insurance. I heard they make pretty good money.
Hey, Nussmeier had a rough Thursday. He had a rough Thursday.
He's putting it lightly. He's being nice.
He was fine on Tuesday and Wednesday, but part of the reason why he was fine on Tuesday and Wednesday is because the other two quarterbacks on the American team, and Taylor Green out of Arkansas and Luke Altmaier out of Illinois, were just so awful. Like they never look good. At least Nussmeier had like a couple of decent days here in Mobile. But yeah, the quarterback play got real rough on Thursday, and
yes.
we were just cracking jokes because Taylor Green, man, it was like that man is Felipe Franks. He's gonna have to make a to tight end because I did not see quarterback ability at all this entire week.
I don't have Green Daddy coming for you now. You know you're a little off, dog. You're a little twisted.
Hey, you got a tall, like 6'5" Arkansas quarterback. I saw Felipe Franks all day, every day, watching that man try to throw the football and not just basically taking up. We're not going to get into it, but like it's practice, man. Throw the football, man.
Right? Exactly.
Don't run it.
Yes.
Anything else, Jarvis, before we get out of here?
Nah, man. Like this was fun, And when you brought up the whole piece about it potentially being your last one, I just like I don't know, man. Like because next year, you can actually be invited to the Locked On house, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to invite you to the Locked On house, okay. Bro. I got you, dog.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So you have to experience that too.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like before you shut it down.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that invite won't be in the mail, but I appreciate.
I'll send it to him personally.
At least as we sit here on January 29, 2026, I am officially invited to the Locked On house.
Yeah, Ross approves of Locked On Saints.
Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints is in the background,
yeah,
approving it. So we'll see on that front. we'll see. If the Falcons beat the Saints this fall and sweep them, I think my invite will be revoked. But we'll see. So, guys, another great week down here in Mobile. We'll be back with more Ian Cunningham as well as Kevin Stefanski and how this triumvirate with Matt Ryan is going to work out and reshape the Atlanta Falcons. That will be our content all week long next week as we make our way back to Atlanta for Jarvis, North Carolina for myself from this week in Mobile. Appreciate all you guys for staying with us. Check out Locked On NFL. They're going to get you geared up all week long for the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of days, week plus. And, of course, check out the link in the description below for the Everydayers Club, LockedOnFalcons.supercast.com, $5 a month or $50 a year, and you can get some sweet Locked On merch, get some Discord access so you can talk trash to Ross Jackson in the Discord. He's in there talking trash with the other Saints fans. Come join, let's wade into it and start this war in the Discord server, as well as, get that ad-free version of Locked On Falcons. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every